I watched the deputy tack the eviction notice to my own front door while my son shouted that I was confused. Then the judge read my neurocognitive exam aloud, the cameras rolled, and Jenna's forged power of attorney unraveled in one breath. That was the day I kicked my son and his wife out of my house, on their daughter's birthday. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. They said I would not remember the date. That I would lose track of days and faces and the names of the trees I planted with my wife. But I remember everything about October 21st, right down to the rasp of the staple gun and the pink balloons floating against the ceiling in the living room. The lamb cake we baked that morning still sat under its glass dome, frosting ruffled like wool. My granddaughter had drawn a 9 on a scrap of paper and taped it to a toothpick. It leaned to the left, like it was bracing for wind. "Sir," Deputy Rios said, polite as always, "we will return at 3 in the afternoon." She looked past me to Caleb. "You must be ready to vacate." "You cannot do this," my son kept saying, as if volume could melt ink. "Dad, you are not thinking right." "He is not thinking right," he told the deputy, turning me into a third person in my own doorway. Behind him, Jenna held her phone at chest height, pretend casual, little red light winking. "Sometimes," she said in a voice soft enough to cut, "we have to protect our elders from themselves." On the table by the window, my ledger lay open. Lambing dates, diesel receipts, chores checked in neat columns. It looked exactly like what it was, the story of a life that worked because the small things happened when they were supposed to. It also looked like a weapon. Paper can be both. They thought the paper on the door was the beginning. They thought the camera in her hand made the world theirs. They were wrong. The notice was only the harvest. The planting had started months before, when the word temporary came into my house and made itself at home. Temporary stretched the way some people stretch the truth, quietly, until nothing fits. They arrived with a borrowed trailer and apologies so smooth I could not find a place to grip them. 2 months, maybe 3, Jenna said, sunglasses parked on top of her head like a crown. Just while we sort out the bank's mistake. Caleb hugged me with one arm, the other kept hold of his phone. "Thank you, Dad. We will make it up to you." "You can make it up to me by eating what I put on your plate," I told him, "and by not parking on the septic lid." He laughed. That has always been his way when he does not want to answer a question. They took the front bedroom because it had the best light for Jenna's videos. I said nothing when I saw the ring her sweating glass left on my wife's cedar chest. Some silences are mercy. Some are receipts. The first few weeks were not terrible. Caleb stacked feed, ran the brush hog along the fence line, and took Lily out to the orchard after school. They named apples like saints. Winesap. Jonathan. Gala. Jenna filmed them from the porch, captioned it all with "Generations on the Land," and added a link to a discount code for sleep gummies. At dinner she waved away potatoes and said, "Carbohydrates are not my journey," then showed me a house online. White walls. Black windows. No eaves. The kind that bakes in July and leaks in November. "This place has potential," she said, eyes moving across my kitchen like price tags. "If it were staged right, you could get, I do not know, high 7s. It is not for sale." "Of course," she said. "For now." When the first month ticked over, the bank had gotten the paperwork wrong. When the second month passed, the bank had gotten the paperwork right but the employer had gotten the offer wrong. By the third month, life was simply hard, and they needed family. I did not set a clock on my son. I did begin a new ledger. On the inside cover of the hardbound notebook where I keep lambing and fuel I wrote, in small letters, October, +1. Concern came into my kitchen in a deputy's uniform, summoned by a voice that trembled on cue. He left the stove on again, Jenna said to the young officer, hand to her chest. He leaves the doors unlocked. He forgets the dogs outside. I am worried. We are all worried. The deputy looked at the stove. The knobs were steady at 0. The kettle sat cold. He looked at the dogs, asleep on their mats and snoring into a shared dream. Do you have proof of any of that? He asked. We were too busy protecting him, she said, and dabbed one eye with the corner of a towel she had folded into a triangle. I took a small spiral pad from the drawer and showed him that morning's page. 5:42 a.m. Kettle on. 5:46 a.m. Kettle off. 6:10 a.m. Dogs back inside. He nodded, told Jenna there was nothing to file, told me to have a good day. Outside, tires whispered on gravel and then the road took him away. I do not understand why you are being defensive, Jenna said, arms folded tight. We are on your side. On the side of what? I asked. A line you drew and forgot to show me. Caleb came in from the barn with hay on his sleeves. He saw our faces, saw the shape of the moment, and kept his eyes on the floor as he said, Jen, maybe we should let Dad rest. Rest is important at his age, she agreed, as if I had become a room that could not hear. That evening I walked the fence under a sky with a yellow rim that meant frost by morning. At the south gate the bottom wire hung loose, the way a stranger leaves it. A shoe print I did not own pressed the mud. A cigarette but with lipstick rested by the post. I wrote the time and place in my ledger and kept walking. News travels here by 2 routes. The official one gets printed. The real one rides the air like pollen. I heard the real one at a church potluck when Alma looked at me over a plate of beans and asked, too carefully, are you doing all right out there, Tom? I am, I said. Why? People heard you were found in your truck at midnight with the engine running and the garage closed, like you forgot. That your dog was tied out all day without water. That you called Lily by your wife's name and got upset when she did not answer. Who told you that? You know how it is. People talk. People repeat. She put her hand on my sleeve. I figured I would just ask you to your face. That is a rare kindness. I thanked her for it. The next morning I bought 2 cameras you could see if you looked up and one that slid under the spice rack with a clean view of the stove. I told Caleb the visible ones were for coyotes near the lambing pen. I told Jenna I wanted to learn how to check cameras on my phone like a modern man. Cute, she said, then took a picture of me on the porch and posted teaching Papa tech. The stove incident came on a cold Thursday. Wind out of the west made the clapboards sing. I was stacking prunings in the orchard when Jenna ran out, shouting that the house was full of gas. I found the front window snapped shut, the stove knob clicked between marks, and the kettle pushed to the edge. Do you smell that? She cried. I did not. I smelled lemon peel perfume. I opened the back door and propped it with a boot. Then I bent and checked the sink trap. A smear of petroleum jelly shone on the brass. I pressed my finger to it. It squished. What if Lily had been here? What if we had all died? Then the sheriff would have a case, I said. What? Nothing. That night I watched the video from under the spice rack. A hand not mine turned the knob halfway and back again until it looked like off to an eye that did not pay the gas bill. That same hand slid the kettle aside and smeared the trap. When the wrist turned, the camera caught 3 gold rings linked like a chain. I had bought that bracelet for my daughter-in-law the week Lily was born. At the bottom edge of the frame, a lock of hair dipped into view, pale, with one dark root. I copied the clip. I dated it. I printed a screenshot of the frame with the bracelet and hair. I slid both into the ledger. Then, under October, +1, I wrote +2. My lawyer, Hank, came over at dawn with a box of donuts and coffee in travel mugs and listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said what I knew he would say. Go see a doctor. I do not like doctors. Go anyway. Document everything. We do not need drama. We need paper. I made an appointment with Dr. Menon at the clinic by the feed store. She had the kind of face that hangs straight like a plumb line. I told her my story the way you list tools as you put them away, in order, one by one. She asked me to count by sevens backward and draw a clock at 11:10 and remember 5 words and lay out how I do breakfast without burning down the county. She asked me about my wife, and I told her 29 Aprils ago we planted the south orchard together and she died in that same month in a room where the lemon tree outside insisted on blooming. Grief, I said, does not make you forgetful. It makes you careful. If I could bottle whatever is running through your veins, she said, I would retire. I do not plan to forget how to use a stove. She grew serious. I am documenting this thoroughly. We will do a follow-up by video in 2 weeks. I will keep both on file. If anyone questions your capacity, we will have more than one data point. Thank you. Here is another bit of old country wisdom, she said as she closed the chart. Do not drink anything in that house you did not pour yourself. On the way home I passed the lot where the cannery used to be and remembered the floor boss who skimmed overtime. The men did not shout. They kept a notebook. Then they took him to the board with proof. Proof has weight. Proof does not care how loud a person can talk when a camera light goes on. Lily ran to meet me in the yard with a drawing pad in her arms. I made a map of the orchard, she said, so we never get lost. Among the lopsided trees she had drawn me small and square with a kettle in one hand and a lamb in the other. The sun wore sunglasses in the corner. Perfect, I said. She leaned close, whispered, Mother says you are forgetful. I think she is wrong. You and I told her, we will be the map. She nodded like we had signed a treaty. Hank brought a manila folder the next day. Inside was language as plain as a fence board. A month-to-month license to occupy, not a lease. Revocable for cause. House rules. Lock the gates you open, no smoking, no cameras in shared rooms, no changing the location of medicine or kitchen equipment, no guests without consent. Rent set at $1 so it met the definition without confusing a court. Sign it, I said to Caleb at the kitchen table. He looked at Jenna. She did her calculations. Then she smiled like a cat. Of course, she said. Families have agreements. Hank slid pens to every hand. Initial each page. I will notarize your signatures. Everyone gets a copy. After they left for groceries, Hank poured us coffee and said, You do not want to be in this fight, Tom, but if you have to be, you want to be the one who brought the paper. I want my son back, I said. He touched my shoulder and did not say what we both knew, some things cannot be returned, only replaced with something smaller and honest. A week later, Adult Protective Services came to my door. 2 women with clipboards stood on the porch while Jenna leaned in the background, voice gentle enough to fool anyone who did not live with her. "We are very concerned," she said. "He keeps getting lost while driving. He forgets to eat." "Please step inside," I said, and took the lead. I showed them the pantry stocked to the ceiling, the freezer with labeled containers, the ledger with meals checked off, the veterinary log for the lambs, the fuel purchase receipts. I explained every camera angle and gave them a printed list of dates and times of alleged incidents, with corresponding video or contradiction. I handed over Dr. Menon's signed exam. One of the women read the report, glanced at my neat lists, and her face changed. She asked to sit down and talk without anyone else in the room. I agreed. They asked if I felt safe. I told them I did, because I knew exactly what I was doing. They nodded, then asked if they could speak to my granddaughter. I said not without her parents' consent, which I would not be getting that day. Outside, on the porch, Jenna had her hand pressed to her throat with such art that anyone driving by would think she held it there to keep herself from falling apart. She asked if there was anything she could provide. The woman with the clipboard said, "Not today, ma'am," and handed me a card with her direct number. That evening Jenna stood in my doorway with a smile so bright it hurt to look at. "You are unwell, and you are making everyone's life harder," she said. "You need to sign this." She placed a power of attorney in front of me. It named her as my agent for everything from my health to my house. The notary seal at the bottom wobbled like it had been applied on a moving train. The date was wrong by a week, and the signature line had my name spelled like a stranger's. "I will take this to Hank," I said. "Why would you need a lawyer if you trust your family?" She asked, and you could hear the line she had practiced for an audience. "This is for your protection." "What are you protecting me from?" "From yourself." She had not expected me to laugh. I kept it short. "There is a pot roast in the oven," I said. "Dinner is at 6. I saw her wrists when she lifted the paper from the table. 3 gold links flashed against the kitchen light. I wondered if she had remembered to take the bracelet off the day the stove took its turn on her stage. The camera had not missed it. Paper does not forget, and neither does film. Caleb appeared later in the barn, smelling of hay and worry. "We are drowning," he said to the floor. "The investment went sideways. The credit cards are choking us. I thought if we could get ahead for 6 months, if you gave us a stake, we could fix it." "How much is a stake?" I asked. His voice wavered. 80,000 would clear the worst of it." "That is not a stake," I said. "That is a rescue." He did not look up. "What do you want me to say?" "I made mistakes. I married someone who spends money like a child plays house, and I kept telling myself I could catch up." He rubbed his face. "She wants to move to the new neighborhood by the lake. She wants a house where the cabinets close soft and the floors never creak." He laughed without humor. "She wants to stop being the person who has to say we are staying with family." "What do you want?" He was quiet for a long time. "I want my daughter to stop seeing me as the man who asks his father for help." "That is not a man," I said, not unkindly. "A man has his own plan." "Is your plan to throw us out?" "My plan is to keep this place whole." "You would choose land over your son." "I choose a promise over a habit. Your mother and I promised each other we would keep this farm together and give it to someone who treated it as a living thing, not a bank." "What about Lily?" "She deserves parents who tell the truth." He stared at the hayloft ladder like it had an answer carved into a rung. "You think I do not know what she sees?" "I was there when you built the porch rail." You did it in one afternoon because the sun was setting and your wife wanted to sit outside and watch the light. I could never be that man. You are not being asked to be me, I said. You are being asked to be the father of your child. He went back to the house without another word. I stood in the barn and listened to the kettle click itself off in my head. When the petition for temporary guardianship arrived, it came with a stack of exhibits. Photographs of messes that looked staged if you knew how Jenna cleaned, which is to say only when a camera was on. A blurry image of a stove knob turned between marks. A neighbor's statement that I had called my granddaughter by my late wife's name, written in a hand I recognized from the refrigerator to-do lists Jenna composed for the camera. A notarized declaration that I had signed a power of attorney a week earlier. The notary's name matched the wobbling seal on that paper she had dangled at my table. Hank prepared the packet that would matter. Dr. Menon's exam. My video follow-up, dated and time-stamped, in which I sat at my kitchen table and recited the 5 words from 3 weeks earlier, drew the same clock, explained how to make oatmeal without turning a knob the wrong way. Still shots from the spice rack camera with the bracelet and the lock of hair. A printed screenshot of Jenna's online post, teaching Papa Tech, dated the day I told her there would be cameras. A copy of the month-to-month license with their initials on every page. A letter from the Adult Protective Services worker stating that no action was warranted and that the elder in question appeared to understand his finances and household operations, to a degree more organized than most people half his age. The courtroom smelled like coffee and floor polish and the particular kind of hope people bring to the bench when they believe it will confirm their version of the world. Jenna arrived in a suit the color of clean snow. Caleb wore a tie that was too tight at the neck. Lily stayed home. I had asked them to keep her out of it. Jenna spoke first, voice pitched for hearts. We are not trying to control, she said. We are trying to care. He is forgetful. He is suspicious. He has been unkind. Unkind how? The judge asked. He records us, she said. He writes everything down like a detective. He does not trust us. The judge lifted an eyebrow. That sounds like a person who understands his life and means to keep it that way. Hank kept his questions short. He is a man who trusts a nail more than a speech. Doctor, he said to Dr. Menon, in your medical opinion, does my client have the capacity to manage his own affairs? He does, she said. I would trust him to keep my books, quite frankly. Hank showed the video from the spice rack camera. In the dark quiet of the courtroom, the sound of a knob turning echoed. The bracelet flashed. The lock of hair dipped into view. No one spoke for a long breath. Jenna tried to say it was taken out of context. The judge asked what context we should consider, other than the hand turning a knob into danger. Jenna did not answer with words. Her mouth opened and closed as if speech had decided to check its calendar. Then came the power of attorney. Hank asked the notary to explain the day she met me, how I spelled my name on her line, who witnessed, what identification I presented. She explained with confidence, like a student reciting a memorized passage. Hank placed my driver's license on the table, the signatures aligned, and the judge leaned down to look. That is not the same hand, the judge said. And that seal is sloppy. If this was your stamp, ma'am, it was not pressed with care. He looked up at Jenna. You may wish to leave this line of argument alone. Perjury does not go down easy. The petition was denied. The judge said, should the time ever come when I needed help, the court would appoint an independent fiduciary, not a relative with a stake. He advised everyone to stand down. He advised me to think carefully about my housing situation. I had already thought. When we got home I placed a notice on the kitchen table. It was printed on plain paper. Termination of license to occupy. 30 days. It cited the house rules they had agreed to follow and did not. No smoking. No cameras in shared rooms. No moving the location of medicine or kitchen equipment. No unauthorized guests. The last rule mattered because Jenna's cousins had begun showing up on weekends in loud cars with speakers like earthquakes, then posting themselves in my orchard laughing into their phones. Caleb stared at the notice like it was a snake he needed to charm. "You cannot put us out," he said, and I heard a child. "I would prefer not to," I said. "I would prefer you chose to stand up on your own feet." Jenna did not look at the paper. She looked at me with bright eyes that used to fool me when I wanted to be fooled. "You will be dead in a year," she said, very quietly, so that only I could hear. "And this will all be ours anyway." It is an odd thing, what goes still in a man when he is done pretending. I felt the quiet reach my hands first, then my voice. "Out," I said. "In 30 days. They did not go. They started locking doors inside my house. They put a camera in the living room and said it was for their safety. They called the sheriff when I moved it to the cupboard where the board games live. Deputy Rios came and told them to be reasonable and told me to keep breathing. "File if you need to," she said. "We will stand where the paper tells us to stand." I filed. It is called an unlawful detainer in this county. It is not a pretty phrase but it is a useful one. The hearing was short. The judge read the license. He read the dates. He read the rules. Then he signed an order that said what I needed it to say. 3 in the afternoon, Deputy Rios told me at the door on the day we began with. "Have their things boxed. We will stand by. We are not here to argue. We are here to see the order carried out." Caleb said it again, "You cannot do this," as if repetition could change the nature of paper. "I already did," I said. I felt cruel when I heard my voice. I also felt honest. Jenna went live on the internet at noon. Hank watched it later and wrote a letter demanding a correction. In the video she walked through my kitchen and called me dangerous, called me cruel, called me confused. She showed the eviction notice and the balloons behind it and said there are men who do not deserve grandchildren. She did not show the ledger. She did not show the spice rack camera. She did not show the 3 gold links on her wrist. Lily came home at 2:30 from school with construction paper glitter in her hair and a book in her backpack. She stood on the porch and looked from the balloons to the paper to her father's face. "What is happening?" she asked. "You are going to stay at your mother's cousin's for a few nights," Jenna said, crouching so the camera could catch both their faces. "We are in a transition, sweetheart." I stepped forward and put my hand on the railing I had sanded the week after my wife died, because solid wood was the only thing that made sense that month. "Do you want to come inside and have cake?" I asked Lily. She looked at her mother. She looked at her father. She looked at me. "Can I have a small piece and take the rest with me?" she asked. "Of course," I said. We cut a slice and ate it on paper plates at the corner of the table while the box stack grew by the door. She told me about a map she was making of the whole county, how she was going to mark where the best apples grow and where the creek runs under the road and where the library keeps the good dragon books on the bottom shelf so smaller hands can reach them. "I am going to send you copies," she said. "We will never get lost. We will be the map," I told her, and she got that look again like I had given her a secret code. Deputy Rios returned at 3 with another officer and stood on the porch while Caleb carried boxes to the car. He moved like a man underwater. Jenna kept filming until the battery died, then went quiet because the silence was the only thing left that could make her look like the adult in the scene. They took the suitcases full of shoes. They took the mirror that made them taller. They took the couch in 2 colors. They did not touch the cedar chest. When the last box was in the trunk, Caleb turned and held out a hand like he needed to touch air to stand. "Can we come back for the rest?" he asked. His voice broke on the last word. "You can schedule a time with Deputy Rios," I said. "She will stand on the porch while you do." He stared at me for a long time, then nodded. He wanted me to say something else. He wanted me to ask him to stay. I did not. The only thing more cruel than telling the truth that day would have been lying. They drove off with the trunk tied down and the balloons brushing the ceiling in the living room where no one sat. The house got large around me. I could hear the humming of the refrigerator and the tick of the kitchen clock, and somewhere in the walls a sound like water turning in a copper elbow. I washed the cake plates, dried them, put them in the cupboard, and then I sat with my ledger and made a line I had known I would make, October 21st. Order carried out. I did not sleep that night. At 2 in the morning I took the folder from the desk drawer and spread the papers across the table like a map. I did what I had promised my wife we would do. I put the farm in a living trust with me as trustee. If I become unable to act, an independent fiduciary will take over. The beneficiary after me will be my granddaughter when she comes of age. My son is excluded for now. There is a clause that says if he keeps steady employment for 5 years, repays a debt to the farm for damages as set by a third party, and completes a class on financial responsibility and something the law calls relational ethics, then he may petition to be a contingent beneficiary again. I signed that paper with a hand that did not shake. Hank witnessed. The notary seal was pressed with care. I made another promise that night. I am a man who knows better than to promise feelings. I promised actions. A 4-H scholarship in Lily's name for one kid every spring who wants to bottle feed lambs and does not have a place to do it. An easement on the south pasture so no one can carve it up when I am gone. A lease to a young couple with hands that know the difference between dirt and soil and eyes that see the orchard as more than background for a video. They gave me a check each month and a jar of pickles at Christmas. I kept the orchard for myself. Some things an old man should be allowed to keep. People ask how it feels to win, if this is winning. They do not say the word bittersweet, they say relief and justice and how did you do it, and where can they get a ledger like mine? It feels like quiet. It feels like grief that finally decided to share its chair with something like peace. It feels like waking up before the alarm and remembering that the kettles of this world turn themselves off if you set them right and check them twice. There were still rumors. Jenna posted videos for a while with captions about cruelty and control and men who do not deserve to be called fathers. Hank wrote letters and then sent a demand for retraction. Some of her posts came down. Others stayed. People who wanted to believe her kept believing. That is the way of belief. It is stubborn even when the stove shows you a hand that is not yours. Alma brought over a lemon pie and said, "I am sorry for the things I thought when I did not know what I did not know." I said, "I forgive you, not because I am good but because it was the only thing that would set both of us down stronger." Caleb called once at dusk in January when the light goes gold and blue at the same time and a crow sits on the fence and argues with the wind. He said, "How are you?" And I said, "I am fine," and we both knew that was not the point. He asked if he could come by for his baseball glove. I told him how to arrange it with the deputy. He said he did not want to see a badge again. I said the rules are there so we do not start bleeding each other when we do not intend to. What about Lily? He asked. What about her? Can she come to the farm? She can always come to the farm. Jenna did not call. She sent a letter through a lawyer threatening to sue for defamation. Hank answered with exhibits. We did not hear more. In March the lambs came like they always do. I woke at 3 in the morning to bottle feed the ones who lost track of their mothers or were born into the cold part of night. I propped my back against a post and felt the warm weight of an animal that did not know anything about guardianship petitions or notary seals. It knew my hands. It trusted them. A week later I got a letter in the mail with glitter inside the envelope and handwriting that leaned left. It was a map. Colored pencil apples and crooked streams and a library square in blue. There was a dot in the center labeled home and a smaller dot that said Papa. The line between them looked like a river that does not care about property lines. Under the map was a sentence, "We will never get lost." I cleaned the spare bedroom. I took down the mirror that made people taller and put up the quilt my wife had sewn when our boy was small enough to think boats were bigger than the kitchen table. I plugged in a nightlight that looks like a barn. I set a book on the dresser about a dragon who learns to say sorry without saying sorry. When Lily came to stay that weekend, we walked the orchard with steaming mugs and the dog weaving between us like a shuttle through cloth. She told me school was teaching them how to evaluate sources and not to believe everything you see online. I said school was wiser than when I was 9. She said her mother had a new job selling houses that smell like vanilla and feel like hotels. I said I hope she is good at it, because it is easier to be good than to pretend. She looked at me from under the brim of her wool hat and said, "Mother says you are unkind." I said, "Mother is allowed to be wrong." At dusk, after she went to bed in the room with the barn nightlight, I sat at the table and wrote her a letter I did not know if I would ever give her. It said this: boundaries are how love keeps breathing. Offense does not mean I hate the world on the other side. It means I promise to keep what is inside alive. It said, if anyone ever tells you that control and care are the same thing, ask them to hold out their hands. Then look for what they are hiding. It said, you do not owe anyone your peace to pay for their comfort. It said, you do not have to break yourself to stay in a family. You can ask a family to bend. I put the letter in the desk drawer under the ledger and the manila folder. The kettle clicked itself off. The house settled around me the way houses do when the people in them stop performing for a camera. Sometimes, in the middle of the day, I stand at the edge of the south pasture and look across the line of fence posts I sunk 30 years ago with my father. Caleb helped that summer. He was 12 and thought blisters meant he had done something wrong. I rub a thumb along the top wire until the oil from my skin makes the dust shine. I say my wife's name into the wind because she was the one who taught me to separate noise from truth and because she would not want me to be lonely even if being alone is the price of not being lied to. The orchard answers the way trees answer, with a whisper that is not words but might as well be. Keep going. Keep it whole. Do not sell it to anyone who thinks the land is only a stage. I am old enough to know that clean endings are the kind in books. The real ones leave a thread trailing off the page. My son may call tomorrow or he may never call again. My daughter-in-law may turn her camera onto someone else's grief and make a living there. My granddaughter will draw more maps. I will hang them by the door. The deputy will drive by sometimes and tip 2 fingers off the steering wheel. Hank will bring donuts on cold mornings and tell me about a case that went sideways and how a ledger set it right. Alma will bring lemon pie once a year and I will pretend not to notice she added more zest than last time. And one day, maybe in October when the light is sharp and the balloons have all popped and the kitchen smells like apples and sugar and the cake under the glass dome looks too pretty to cut, I will hear tires on the gravel and the porch boards will creak and my son will stand where the paper once hung and say something that is less an excuse than a sentence that admits what it cannot repair. I do not know if I will forgive him that day. I know I forgave him the day I told the deputy to post the order, because forgiveness is not the same as permission and love is not the same as trust. I can love my son and still lock the gate. The notice on the door is gone now. In its place my granddaughter taped a smaller piece of paper with a drawing of a lamb and a kettle. Beneath it, in purple pencil, she wrote the only instruction I plan to keep until the last page. We will be the map.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.